Hey everyone, welcome to Daily English, your quick and easy way to learn English every day. From useful phrases to fun grammar tips.
The morning sun was soft and golden, and the street outside my apartment was still quiet. I walked quickly, holding my small bag close to me. It was Monday, and I was already late for work. I worked at a small flower shop in the city center, and mornings were always busy. As I reached the corner of the street, I saw something unusual. A police car parked near the bakery. A few people were standing nearby, whispering. I slowed down a little, curious. Then I saw him. He stood beside the car, tall and calm, wearing his dark blue police uniform. The sunlight reflected on his badge, and his face looked serious but kind. His name tag read, Officer Daniel. He was talking to an old man who looked upset. The old man's bicycle had been stolen, and Officer Daniel was taking notes in his small black notebook. I stopped for a moment, pretending to look at my phone, but honestly, I couldn't take my eyes off him. Something about him was different. His voice was deep but gentle. When the old man spoke, Daniel listened carefully, nodding with patience. It was rare to see someone so respectful these days, especially in the middle of the busy city. When the conversation ended, the old man smiled a little and thanked him. Officer Daniel smiled back, and that smile made my heart skip a beat. I didn't even notice when the traffic light changed. Someone honked behind me, and I jumped. "Oh!" I gasped, realizing I was standing in the middle of the crossing. Officer Daniel looked up and saw me. He walked closer and said kindly, "Ma'am, please be careful while crossing. The cars here move fast." His voice, calm and firm, made me freeze for a second. I'm sorry," I said quickly, my cheeks turning red. "I wasn't looking." He smiled slightly. "It's all right. Just watch the road next time." I nodded, embarrassed, and hurried away toward my shop, but my heart was beating so fast I could hardly breathe. All day, I couldn't stop thinking about him. At lunchtime, I told my coworker Sana about what happened. She was arranging roses in a vase when I started the story. "So, there was this police officer," I began, trying to sound casual. Sana raised her eyebrows and smiled. "Oh no, I can already tell where this is going. Was he handsome?" I laughed. "I don't know. Maybe a little." "Maybe," she teased. "You're blushing. That means definitely." I sighed and shook my head. "He was just different. Kind. The way he spoke to that old man, it was nice to see." Sana grinned. "Well, maybe you'll see him again." I didn't believe it. In a big city like ours, people disappear into the crowd. Still, a small part of me hoped I would see him again. That evening, as I walked home, it started to rain. I didn't have an umbrella, so I'd covered my head with my bag and ran toward the bus stop. The rain came harder, cold and fast. I was almost soaked when I reached the shelter. Only a few people were waiting. I stood near the edge, watching cars splash through puddles. Then, a familiar voice said behind me, "You again." I turned around, and there he was, Officer Daniel. His hair was slightly wet, and his uniform looked darker in the rain. He smiled as he stepped under the shelter. "Oh, hi," I said awkwardly. "You're everywhere, aren't you?" He laughed softly. "Just doing my rounds, making sure people are safe. You're not walking home in this weather, are you?" I shook my head. "No, I'm waiting for the bus. But it's late." He looked down the road, then back at me. "If it doesn't come soon, I can drop you nearby. My car's just over there." I hesitated. I didn't want to seem strange or too eager. But the rain was getting worse, and I didn't want to fall sick. "Thank you," I said finally, "if it's not too much trouble." He smiled. "Not at all." We ran through the rain to his car, laughing as the water splashed around us. Inside, it was warm and quiet. I could smell the faint scent of coffee and leather. "Where to?" he asked. "Greenwood Apartments," I said softly. He started the engine, and we drove through the rain. The sound of the wipers and the hum of the car filled the silence. I glanced at him. His hands on the steering wheel were strong and steady, his eyes focused on the road. I wanted to ask 100 questions about his work, his life, but I stayed quiet. After a few minutes, he said, "So, what do you do?"
I work at Lily's flower shop. It's not far from here. Ah, he smiled. That explains the flowers on your bag. I laughed. Yes, it's a messy job sometimes. He chuckled. But flowers make people happy. That's important work. I looked at him surprised. Most people never thought about it that way. Soon, we reached my building. I thanked him and got ready to leave, but he said, "Wait, here, take this." He handed me a small police card with his name and number on it. "In case you ever need help," he said with a warm smile. I took it carefully. "Thank you, Officer Daniel." He nodded. "And please, next time you cross the street, look both ways." I laughed softly. "I'll remember that." When I reached my apartment, I couldn't stop smiling. I placed the small police card on my desk and stared at his name, Officer Daniel Harris. That night, as I lay in bed listening to the rain, I kept thinking about his calm eyes, his voice, and the way he smiled when he said goodbye. I didn't know if I'd ever see him again, but I already knew one thing. I had a crush on a police officer.
The next few days passed quietly, but my mind was not quiet at all. Every time the doorbell of the flower shop rang, my heart jumped a little, as if I expected to see him walk in again. But of course, he didn't. Still, I couldn't help glancing at the police card on my desk each night. His name, Officer Daniel Harris, looked strong and calm, just like him. I told myself it was silly. He had just helped me during the rain. It was his job to be kind. That didn't mean he thought about me the way I thought about him. But crushes don't listen to logic, do they? One Thursday morning, I was arranging tulips at the shop when the bell above the door rang. "Good morning," I called out cheerfully, without looking up. "Good morning," a familiar voice replied. I froze. I turned, and there he was, standing in the doorway, in his neat blue uniform, holding a small pot with a green plant inside. "Officer Daniel," I said, surprised. "I mean, hello." He smiled at my awkwardness. "Just Daniel is fine." "Right," I said, feeling my face grow warm. How can I help you today?" He looked around the shop, his eyes moving over the colorful rows of flowers. "I came to get a plant for the police station's front desk. Something small, easy to care for." I laughed softly. "You came to the right place." We walked together to the shelf where I kept indoor plants. I showed him a few options. "This one's a peace lily. It needs light but not too much water. And this one is a snake plant. It can survive even if you forget about it for weeks." He smiled. "That sounds perfect for us. We're not great with plants at the station." As I picked up a small pot to wrap it, he said gently, "I wanted to thank you, actually." I looked up, surprised. "Thank me? For what?" He smiled slightly. "For trusting me that day, when it rained. Most people hesitate to get in a police car, but you didn't." I laughed. "Well, you looked trustworthy, and it was raining too hard to think twice." He chuckled, and for a moment our eyes met. There was a kind warmth in his expression, not the formal look he had the first time we met. I wrapped the plant carefully and handed it to him. "Here you go. The snake plant, for the police station." He took it, and our fingers touched lightly. My heart skipped a beat. "How much?" he asked. "On the house," I said before I could stop myself. "A thank you gift. For keeping the city safe." He looked amused. "Then I'll make sure this one doesn't die, no matter what." I smiled. "Good. I'll come check one day." "Please do," he said, his voice soft. "We could use some flowers around there." When he left, the doorbell jingled, and I stood there, holding the ribbon I had used to wrap the plant, smiling like a fool. 2 days later, my phone rang in the middle of the afternoon. "Hello, Lily's flower shop," I answered. "Hi," said a familiar voice. I instantly recognized it. "Officer Daniel?" He laughed gently. "Yes? I hope I'm not disturbing you." "No, not at all," I said, my heart racing. Well, we have an event tomorrow, a small community fair organized by the station. We'll have stalls, food, some fun games for kids. Would you like to come? Me? I asked, surprised. Yes, and if your shop could bring a few flower pots for decoration, that would be even better. It's not an order, just an invitation. I smiled into the phone. I'd love to. Thank you for asking. Great, he said warmly. It starts at 10 in the morning at Central Park. I'll be there early. I can help you set up. After the call ended, I felt a mix of excitement and nerves. What should I wear? How should I act? Was this just a work event or something more? Sana teased me all evening. A police officer invited you personally? Oh, this is serious. I threw a small flower at her. Stop it! It's not like that. But maybe, just maybe, it was. The next morning, the park was filled with colorful stalls, cheerful music, and children running around with balloons. I set up a small table with bright potted flowers and a sign that said, "Bring home a bloom." Daniel was already there, helping a group of kids with a safety quiz. He waved when he saw me and came over. "You made it," he said. "Of course. It looks amazing here." He helped me carry a few pots from my car. His sleeves were rolled up, and I noticed a small scar on his arm, the kind of mark that probably had a story behind it. When I asked, he smiled. "Oh, that? Nothing big. A dog bite, from when I was new on the job." "Ouch," I said. "Did it hurt?" He laughed. "Only my pride." As the day went on, we talked between visitors. He introduced me to his colleagues, who were friendly and joked that Daniel never smiled this much at work. At one point, a little girl came to my table and accidentally dropped a flower pot. The clay broke into pieces, and she looked close to tears. Before I could react, Daniel kneeled down and said softly, "Hey, it's all right. Flowers grow again, right?" The girl nodded slowly, and he gave her a small sticker that said, "Junior Helper." I watched him and thought, this man isn't just a police officer. He's someone who carries kindness in every small thing he does. In the evening, after the fair ended, I was packing up when Daniel came to help again. "Thank you for bringing so much color to the event," he said, lifting a box of empty pots. "I thank you for inviting me. It was fun." We walked toward the parking area together. The sun was setting, painting the sky pink and orange. For a moment, we didn't say anything. Then he said quietly, "I'm glad we met again." I looked at him, feeling my heart warm. "Me too." He smiled. "Maybe we'll keep meeting like this, by accident." "Or by choice," I said softly, before realizing how bold that sounded. He laughed, a gentle sound. "I like that better." When we reached my car, he said, "Drive safe, okay? And text me when you get home, just to let me know you reached." I smiled. "Yes, officer." He grinned. "I'll hold you to that." As I drove home, my phone buzzed with a message. It was from him. "Thank you for today. And thank you for the flowers. The station looks brighter already." I smiled, my heart full. Maybe, just maybe, this wasn't just a crush anymore.
Daniel and I began to talk more often. Sometimes he passed by the flower shop during his rounds, pretending it was just a coincidence. Sometimes he called to check if everything was fine in the neighborhood, but I knew it wasn't just about safety. He had started to become a part of my days. A message in the morning, a quick chat in the afternoon, and sometimes a walk home together after I closed the shop. And each time we talked, I liked him more. He was kind, patient, and had a quiet sense of humor that always made me laugh. But there was also something else, something distant, as if part of him was locked away behind a door he didn't want anyone to open. One Sunday afternoon, he asked if I wanted to go for a walk. The park was calm and full of soft spring light. Children were flying kites, and the air smelled of jasmine and grass. We walked side by side, talking about small things, movies, favorite foods, funny stories from work. "Do you ever get scared?" I asked him suddenly. "Being a police officer, it must be dangerous." He smiled a little. "Sometimes, yes, but fear is part of the job. What matters is what you do with it." I nodded, admiring his courage. "I could never do what you do." He looked at me gently. "You bring peace in a different way. Flowers make people smile. That's important too." His words made me blush, but I noticed his eyes looked a bit sad. "Daniel," I said softly, "can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why do you always look like you're thinking about something far away?" He stopped walking for a moment and looked at the lake ahead. The wind moved his hair and his face grew serious. "There are some things," he said slowly, "that stay with you, things you can't talk about easily." I waited quietly, not wanting to push him. After a pause, he said, "Last year, my partner, my best friend on the force, was hurt during an operation. We were chasing a suspect late at night. I made a decision that went wrong." He sighed deeply. "He survived, but he had to leave the job. I still see him sometimes, but every time I do, I feel responsible." I felt my heart tighten. "That wasn't your fault, Daniel. You did what you thought was right." "Maybe," he said softly, "but guilt doesn't care about logic." I wanted to comfort him, but I didn't know how. So I said gently, "You still protect people every day. That matters. He would be proud of that." He looked at me with gratitude in his eyes. "Thank you. You have a way of making heavy things feel lighter." I smiled. "That's what flowers do." He laughed quietly, and the sadness in his eyes softened. A few days later, something strange happened. I was closing the shop one evening when a man walked in. He looked rough and nervous, with tired eyes and a dark jacket. "Are you Lily?" he asked, his voice low. "Yes," I said carefully. "Can I help you?" He looked around and whispered, "You know that police officer, right? The tall one, Harris?" My heart skipped. "Officer Daniel, yes. Why?" He leaned closer. "Stay away from him. He's in trouble, big trouble." Before I could say anything, he turned and walked out quickly. I stood there frozen, my heart pounding. What did he mean? Was it a threat or some kind of misunderstanding? That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking of Daniel, his calm eyes, his kindness, the story he had told me about his partner. Was this connected? The next morning I called him. "Daniel," I said, trying to sound calm, "someone came to the shop yesterday. He said strange things about you." He was silent for a second. Then he said, "What did he say exactly?" "He told me to stay away from you, that you're in trouble." He sighed. "I was afraid this might happen." "What's going on?" I asked softly. "I can't explain everything right now," he said firmly, "but please, don't worry. You're safe. Just trust me." I could hear the tension in his voice and the fear. "Daniel," I said, "if something's wrong, I can help. You don't have to face it alone." He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "You already help, just by believing in me. That's enough." And he ended the call. 2 nights later, there was a knock at my door. When I opened it, Daniel stood there. Not in his uniform, but in casual clothes. His face looked tired and his eyes held a storm. "Can I come in?" he asked quietly. "Of course," I said, stepping aside. He sat down on the couch, running a hand through his hair. "I owe you the truth," he said finally. I sat opposite him, waiting. "The man who came to your shop was part of a case I worked on last year. He used to run with a small gang that sold stolen cars. I helped arrest his leader. He blames me for everything that happened. My eyes widened. So that's why he came to warn me. Daniel nodded. Yes, he's trying to scare me, through you. Is he dangerous? Maybe, Daniel said quietly. That's why I've been keeping an eye on your shop these past few days. I didn't want you to know, but I've been driving by often. I felt a mix of fear and warmth. You've been protecting me? He smiled softly. Of course I have. For a long moment, we just sat there, the air filled with quiet understanding. Then he said, Lily, I know this isn't fair. You didn't ask for any of this. You just wanted to sell flowers and live a simple life. I shook my head. Daniel, don't say that. I care about you. You don't have to hide things from me anymore. His eyes met mine. Serious, searching. You really mean that? Yes, I said. I trust you. For the first time, his shoulders relaxed. He leaned back, sighing deeply, as if letting go of a heavy weight. Thank you, he whispered. You don't know how much that means. I smiled gently. Now that I know your secret, maybe I can help keep you safe for once. He chuckled quietly. I think you already do. As he left that night, he turned at the door and said, You're braver than you think, Lily. I smiled. Only when you're around. When the door closed, I felt something change inside me. My crush was no longer just a crush. It had grown into something deeper, something real. But I also knew one thing clearly now. Loving a police officer meant stepping into a world where danger could appear at any time. And somehow, I wasn't afraid anymore.
The next few days were tense. Even though Daniel told me not to worry, I could sense something was happening behind the scenes. He visited the flower shop every morning, pretending to buy coffee from the stall across the street, but I knew he was watching, making sure I was safe. Sometimes he would smile at me through the window, and that small smile was enough to calm my heart for the whole day. But at night, I still wondered, what if that man came back? What if Daniel got hurt again? Caring for someone like him meant living with a constant fear, but also with pride. Because now I understood, his job wasn't just about catching criminals. It was about protecting lives, even when it meant putting his own in danger. It happened on a Friday evening. I was closing the shop when I noticed a black car parked across the street. The same man who had come before was sitting inside. My hands trembled. I quickly locked the door and picked up my phone. Before I could call, I heard footsteps behind me. "Don't move," a rough voice said. I turned slowly. It was him, the same man now standing right inside my shop. "Please," I said, trying to stay calm. "I don't want any trouble." He glared at me. "You shouldn't have gotten close to that officer. He ruined my life, and now he's going to pay for it." I swallowed hard. "You don't have to do this." He stepped closer, but suddenly a voice shouted from outside, firm and familiar, "Police, step away from her." It was Daniel. The man froze. Daniel entered with another officer, gun drawn but steady. His voice was calm. "Put your hands where I can see them. No one needs to get hurt." The man looked from Daniel to me, his face twisted with anger. "You think you can stop me?" "Look around," Daniel said, his voice low but powerful. "This ends here." For a moment, the tension filled the air. Then the man dropped the small knife he was holding and sank to his knees. Daniel quickly moved forward, handcuffed him, and gave a short signal to his partner. The second officer led the man outside. Daniel turned to me. "Are you hurt?" I shook my head, my voice shaking. "No, you came just in time." He exhaled deeply and stepped closer. "I told you I'd keep you safe." I smiled weakly. "You always do." But when I looked at him, I saw something in his eyes, relief mixed with fear. He had been truly worried. "Daniel," I whispered, "I was so scared." He gently touched my shoulder. I was too, scared of losing someone I care about. For the first time, he said it clearly, without hesitation. Someone he cared about. That night, he stayed until the other officers finished their reports. I made tea, my hands still shaking. When everything was quiet again, he sat with me on the small bench outside the shop. The street was calm now, washed clean by the rain that had just begun to fall. "Do you ever get tired?" I asked softly. "Always being strong?" He looked at the empty street. "All the time. But I can't stop. People depend on me." I nodded. "It's brave, but it's also lonely." He turned toward me. "It was," he said, "until I met you." My heart fluttered. "Daniel!" He smiled gently. "You remind me there's still softness in this world. That even after all the darkness, there can still be peace and flowers." I laughed quietly, blinking back tears. "That's the sweetest thing anyone's ever said to me." He took my hand, carefully, as if asking permission. "You've been part of my life in ways you don't even see, Lily, but I need to be honest with you again." I looked at him, suddenly nervous. "What do you mean?" He sighed. "I might be transferred soon, to another district. It's safer there. And after this incident, my chief thinks it's best." The words hit me like a cold wind. "Transferred? For how long?" "I don't know," he said quietly. "Maybe a few months, maybe more." I stared at my hands. I didn't want to be selfish, but the thought of him leaving felt like losing sunlight after dawn. "When?" I asked. "In a week." There was silence, heavy, but honest. Then I said, "You should go, if it's safer for you." He looked surprised. "Aren't you angry?" I smiled sadly. "No, because loving someone means wanting them to be safe, even if it means missing them." He took a deep breath, his eyes shining. "You always find the right words." I laughed softly. "That's my job. Words and flowers." The week passed too quickly. On his last day, he came to the shop in plain clothes, holding a small white box. He said, "I wanted to give you something before I go." Inside the box was a tiny silver keychain, a miniature police badge with my initials engraved on the back. "It's a reminder," he said, "that someone out there cares about you, and that if you ever need help, I'll come running." I smiled through tears. "You always do!" Then I gave him something too, a small pot with a single white lily. "For your new desk," I said softly, "so you don't forget where to find peace." He took it carefully. "I'll take good care of it. I promise." When he turned to leave, I felt an ache in my chest, the kind that comes when something beautiful ends too soon. He stopped at the door, looked back, and said, "Goodbye, Lily." I whispered, "Come back soon, Daniel." And then he was gone. 2 months later, on a quiet, rainy morning, a letter arrived at my shop. It was written in neat handwriting. "Dear Lily, I'm doing well in the new district. It's quieter here, fewer cases, more sky. Your lily is still alive, though I nearly overwatered it once. I wanted to tell you something I couldn't say before I left. You didn't just bring color to my days. You reminded me what it means to care again, to hope again. If you ever find yourself looking at the rain and thinking of me, know that I'm thinking of you too. Yours, Daniel." I read the letter 3 times, smiling through tears. Outside, the rain fell softly on the petals of the flowers, and I whispered to the air, "Stay safe, Officer Daniel." Sometimes, love doesn't need promises. Sometimes it's enough to know that two hearts met, even if their paths are different. I still work at the flower shop. Sometimes I see police cars passing by, and every time I do, I smile. Because somewhere out there, there's a man who taught me that bravery isn't always loud, and that even a police officer can fall in love with a florist who believes in peace and petals. And as for me, I'll always have a crush on a police officer who once smiled at me in the rain.
Thanks for watching Daily English. If you learned something new today, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more quick English lessons every day. See you tomorrow.